Welcome to Wild Soul Gathering. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie, and I'll be your host for this episode of Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. Hello to all you wild souls out there. I want to send a special thank you to each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to join and listen to our guests as we discuss the many aspects of spirituality. To stay updated on our latest releases, please follow us, share with friends who may be interested, and if you feel so moved, a kind rating and review is always appreciated. In the tradition of Happy Hour, cheers to some new insights, peace, revitalization, and perhaps an aha moment that may change your life. Welcome to Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. I'm Dr. Sandra Marie, and back in the studio today, I have medical intuitive Mark Robinson returning to the show. Welcome back to Happy Hour, Mark.
Wonderful to be back. Thank you for the opportunity. Very excited to talk about today's topic.
Oh, definitely. Me too. Mark, I'm really grateful to have you join me today for the show, which I think may be a little bit different than the usual format that we do for Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. My spiritual curiosity was piqued when I noticed that 1987 was repeatedly coming up in conversations and interviews. Looking back a little bit and saw this event called the Harmonic Convergence, we talked a little bit about that, and you provided me some insights, which created a bit of an aha. As we were having our virtual park bench sunset talks on the Gulf, more dates and events started coming up related to spiritual events and the changing times. Many feel like the end of the times are coming right now and that the golden age is upon us. I was hoping that you could give us a little background on 1987, and during this interview, we are going to take our way all the way up to March of 2023, which I think may be a little interesting.
Well, I would love to give a little background information that would support how these energies actually work. Prior to 1987, I was clueless about any new age spirituality. I was not on my quest. Something happened the year before that suddenly awakened me and got me involved in all kinds of things that were blessing me with all this new information and really getting me charged and excited about it. And when I did my research and looked back and realized the timing of this, it was obvious to me that the energies were already setting up for this harmonic convergence. And I went through my awakening so I could be a part of this harmonic convergence. One of the things that happened to me was that I ended up doing yoga with this wonderful woman named Mary Lou. If you're still alive and out there, Mary Lou, thank you for everything. She, aside from yoga class, she was very spiritually attuned, classic New Ager, a hippie from the 60s, loved her, loved the way she dressed. But she knew, she was into astrology, and she knew about this alignment of the planets. And she organized a big group of people in the city that I lived in to rendezvous on the beach at a specific time when this convergence was happening and to meditate for a half hour. And of course, I just jumped in wholeheartedly, not really knowing what I was doing at the time. But now that I reflect on it, I think, oh my gosh, what a powerful moment in humanity that I had the privilege of participating in. This happened, of course, anything astrological is global. It happens for the whole world. For Eastern Standard Time, where I was living, we had to meet at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Well, you know me, I'm not a morning person, so I just stayed up the whole night.
Oh, my.
I went to bed after the So what happened was, and I'm going to read from my notes here, in August 16th, and for me, at 6 a.m. in the morning in 1987, there was a perfect alignment or conjunction of the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, which happened to all be in the sign of Leo, which is a fire transformative created sign. The conjunctions that were involved, they were all trines, and it was Jupiter in Aries, Saturn and Uranus in Sagittarius, and again, everything was still in fire signs. The sun and moon and the 6 planets formed a grand trine that created a harmonic flow of energy. And this was an astrological event that happens like once every 10,000 years. This was truly a moment. And what the energies did was to bring humanity into a new age of spiritual enlightenment. So think back to 1987 and everything that was going on with media, books. Shirley MacLaine was writing these books about her spiritual evolution that turned into some people's Bibles, mine for a short period of time. You started seeing it in movies, and of course, every book I seemed to pick up was all about this new energy. It truly was a global thing that just affected everybody's experience. Two of the really significant things that happened soon after this harmonic convergence, that again was bringing this spiritual enlightenment to the world, was that the Soviet Union fell. The wall in Berlin came down and the Soviet Union
I remember
no
those
longer
pictures in the
existed.
news.
And yes, I remember seeing that of people, Germans, tearing down that wall and dancing on the pieces and parts. I just sat there and got goosebumps and cried. I remember that viscerally, watching that on TV. The other thing that soon happened after that was the European Union was formed. All the European countries came together to create what we now know as the European Union. And they created one currency, so they would have this competitive power edge to compete with the other big powers in the world. Part of the spiritual enlightenment is people coming together for the common good. For those countries in Europe to come together for their common good typified exactly what that spiritual energy was about, the power that it had, and what it was starting to create. And this was all setting us up. It was setting us up for what happened in 2012 and what's going to happen at the end of this month when Aries goes into, or Sun moves into Aries at 00 degrees, which is significant because that's the beginning of the astrological new year. And the way it's aspected on the chart is the beginning of the new age that we have been working towards. Some interesting statistics, though, about that harmonic convergence. There were official gatherings over 200 sites in the U.S. alone. And again, remember, this was a global thing. And they said that they needed at least 140,000 people to participate in this meditation to generate that kind of energy to open up this portal. And they well exceeded that number. In that moment, humanity made the decision to move forward into this new golden age that you referred to earlier. There was no going back from this point.
I'm excited to talk a little bit about the stuff in the middle. As we talk about this timeline, it's all a stepping point. My understanding is, just as you said, the energy needs to go up and there has to be a percentage on the planet that allows you to move forward, right? What I love about it is that you gave that number of 140,000 people, because I think people think that it's 1 million people. And talking a lot of times, you'll hear people say, well, we hit the 51%. And I think 51% means absolutely nothing in this spirit world and with what we're doing with everything. It just shows the importance of a small group, but it also shows the importance of the group energy and that group meditations.
Correct. I just wanted to point out that in that yoga class, we started it with and ended it with a meditation. And it was explained to me that when a group comes together to meditate, that energy goes exponential to the number participating in that group. So when you look at that 140,000 people, that's 140,000 people to the 140,000 power exponentially. And that's what kind of energy that was created in that moment.
That was fascinating. Let's go to 2011, November of 2011.
Okay.
That date came up in the timeline when I was looking back, but there's many who believed on November 11, 2011, the Christ had crystallized love returned to the planet on that day. Many people believe, and religions teach about the Christ, Jesus, Yeshua. Definitely, he is a strong figure in both the religious world and the spiritual world. Thousands of years ago, the Christ Jesus walked the earth as a master. One of the things that we were left with is that there would be a second coming. If I get back into my catechism, Catholic days, you expect like this human being to be walking the earth. And I thought, okay, in my mind, the second coming of Christ has happened. It just looks different than what many people thought it would look like. The Christ consciousness has returned to the planet.
the second coming wasn't a birth of a man, it was the amplification of the energy that that man represented.
So then we go to 12-12-12, which would be the following year. And I know that there was a lot of conversation on 12-12-12 with this being end of times and doomsdayer and all of that type of energy. Again, many believed it was the end of times. And I think it was the end of the Mayan calendar. Does that recollect with you?
Yes, the Mayan calendar and the Hopi calendar that I know of. I'm sure there were other indigenous calculations that all ended around that time also.
The other thing that was significant about that is the New Agers marked that date as a starting period that the Earth would undergo positive spiritual transformations. Again, it fits in with an ending and a beginning that goes together. It was all about transformation. I heard one spiritual teacher frame it as transformation of the operating systems for how humanity operated, and that we were going to be gifted more applications, so to speak, to bring harmony and peace and joy. It was the beginning period of a start of things.
Like Christ and all the Eastern religions and philosophies, they've existed for eons. The energy and the information has been there for man to access. What happened in 1987 with this window opening up amplified the energy, so all that information could be brought to the masses. Again, this New Age movement that was happening in the 80s and peaked in the 90s was all about an awakening to the fact that we live in an energetic world, that we're all one, as in, I always shy from using the word God, that we're all connected in some way. And in the big picture, we are all of one entity, one mechanism, one energy. And what you were talking about in 2011 just brought home to me that this has just been snowballing ever since, and more things keep adding to it, making it stronger and more powerful and more accessible to the masses.
To be honest with you, as I was running all this stuff through my head and we were having our park bench conversations, it just started making sense to me as you said this, and I wasn't aware of it at the time because of what was going on in my life, that this really has been process that continues, as you just said, to snowball and to grow. And I think it's about to snowball, honestly, a lot more. 2012, I take this Mastering Alchemy class and I try to go back when this fella, Jim Self, really put it together. Most recently, he brought up 2012. And when I go back to a lot of our, I'll say modern day teachers, but a lot of people who have been putting together these spiritual programs and dedicating themselves to increasing the consciousness of life and just helping people generally on their spiritual path, a lot of this goes back to, well, I started this in 2012. 2012 seems to come up a lot, just like 1987 has come up a lot. I feel like 2012, there was clearly a big shift in energy, again, that awakened and opened, and it brought more portals and opportunity. There always seems to be like a time period that goes with it. We were talking the other day. This is probably a good way to fit this in. And, you know, I've been super excited about the last week of March to come, because I believe in my heart that we have some significant things coming up in March of 2023. And I've repeatedly said to you, I am so excited. I feel like a kid on Christmas morning, like my energy is really pumped up. This is happening. We're part of it. Oh, I'm so thrilled and excited about it. And you said, Sandra, we need to talk. I think I need you to understand that you're not going to go to bed on the 22nd and wake up on the 23rd and all of this stuff is going to suddenly change in life. And I was like, no, I get that. I do truly get that. When you said that, it gave me a moment of pause to step back. And I thought, I understand what's going to happen. And we'll talk a little bit more as we move on, that this is a slow progression and things will happen in increments. But that's still not how I feel inside. My energy is so excited about it.
Oh, I think some things need to be defined a little bit better here. That cautionary moment when I said, this isn't going to happen overnight is from my own experience and my own disappointment. So let's talk about 2012 and what happened in that year that changed the energy. You kept mentioning the energy seemed to change that year. Well, I'm going to take it from an astrological perspective, as I often do. Us New Agers, back from the 80s and 90s, knew that the Piscean Age was going to end and the Aquarian Age was going to begin. There was a song back in the 60s, when the moon is in the seventh house and Jupiter aligns with Mars and peace will guide the planets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
By the group, the fifth dimension.
But that planet, oh my gosh, look, and I have that fifth dimension written down here that I wanted to reference later and have you explain. I'm so glad you brought that up. So anyways, that planetary configuration happened on December 12th, 2012. That was the official end of the Piscean Age and the beginning of the Aquarian Age. Now, ages last for about 2,500 to 3,000 years. And the Piscean Age began with Christ. If you notice, one of the symbols for Christ are the two fishes, which is the symbol for Pisces. And a lot of the qualities of religion that was birthed from the experience with Christ is typified by the energies of Pisces. That officially ended, and the Aquarian Age officially began. Well, as a New Ager from the 80s and 90s, I thought in that following year, all the qualities of the Aquarian Age were going to manifest, and that was the birth of the Golden Age. Things were really going to suddenly be absolutely wonderful, loving, compassionate on planet Earth. And as you know, just the opposite happened. Whenever you have a change, there is a period of transition. And that transition started in 1987 with the Harmonic Convergence. Well, let me do some quick math in my head. That was at least 25 years before 2012. It took 25 years to prep for that age. Well, it's going to take another 25 or so years to actually transition fully into that period. What's been happening since then is all the old institutions that rule our society have to be deconstructed so they can be reconstructed with the Aquarian Age. Not to jump ahead, this is what's going to start happening on, well, actually, no, it's been happening. If you keep track of what's happening in the world, the construction, the actual physical mortar and building is going to start happening in the end of this month. But we're still in that deconstruction phase.
There is a question I want to ask you, though, because now we're going to go to 2019. So we're getting close to where we're actually getting into what we've been experiencing. From 1987, why do I think 2032 or there was 28 years? Was there a specific number of years that go with this?
Well, I think I remember hearing that it's a 38-year process, 16 years of deconstruction, 16 years of reconstruction. But I'm not clear as to exactly when that started. I thought it was 2012.
Oh, that would be 2032.
Okay.
Well, if it was 1987, that would take us to 2032, which is the year that I keep hearing as we'll be complete with this.
But I am 100% sure that in my lifetime, we will be well into the Golden Age on planet Earth. All the old paradigms of religion.
I'm with you with that. And I think that we are actually at a huge tipping point now. That's part of why I'm just so excited, because I feel like it's just closer than we think. When I initially heard this, it was hard for me to hear. We'll talk about it. They talk about the next big event was in 2019. And like I said, this really took me back a bit. When I first heard it spoken like this, they said the coronavirus was a spiritual event. I believe that there was purpose to it, but to hear the words, it was the most recent significant spiritual event that occurred. It was difficult for me to hear, and you know that I was on that Navajo Zuni reservations for when that started. So I just had to take a pause and get past my PTSD with it. As I was hearing it spoken, it made a lot of sense that the coronavirus in 2019 was a spiritual event that was very intentional, because it truly upended everything. People were living very hypnotic lives at the time. I go to work, I get up, I go to bed, I get up, I go to work, I come home from work, I go to bed. Everything was very hypnotic and routine, I would say, before COVID. And clearly COVID did upend everything. It created a situation where everything was paused and people had started reflecting about who they are, who do they want to be on the spiritual journey as a human being. Wow, how many people have you talked to since that has happened whose lives went in a total different direction? People quit jobs, people made life changes.
Almost everybody.
Yes, the media, but they talk about the Great Resignation, and they had a chance to really relook at their lives. And like you said, I can't even count how many people are living very different lives after the coronavirus. What was important to them shifted.
I think all of humanity needed that meditative moment when they were totally disconnected from the machine of our society, the economics of it. So they had that time to, as you say, reflect and reevaluate. Everybody said the world will never be the same after COVID, and that's absolutely true.
I agree. And the other thing about COVID was COVID interrupted life as we knew it in every area of the planet.
And speaking of the U.S., I'd also like to point out the presidential election. That was 2016, wasn't it? But that seemed to have the same power and same effect, where there was an unexpected outcome that changed the energy and the direction that the U.S. was moving in.
It'd be interesting to know what the astrology was. So yes, I would say globally, definitely coronavirus. And then now that you bring that up, as a country, it was unexpected and it has upended everything in the country. You've brought up astrology a couple of times, and you're certainly the expert on it. I have, of most recent, been paying attention to the astrologies. As you well know, Pam Gregory, astrologer from the UK, and she is just an amazing soul. She takes astrology to a whole different level. In addition to the astrology, one of the things that I totally respect her for is she stops seeing clients who focus all her energy on elevating the consciousness of the planet. She is working very hard and putting a lot of action to that. But she has brought up some very significant astrological events. As they're talking about in this astrology, it really looks like things are aligning up for an Armageddon, an apocalypse, the end of times to be happening next week. What started it was, we were talking, I kept saying, Mark, there's something about March 23rd. Jim Self, who I follow, he has put together an offering called Heaven's Cross. When I Googled it, Heaven's Cross refers to the veil that separates the heavens and the earth will be removed and the heavens and the earth become one. This being the day that it happens. That's part of why I've been so excited. So when we talk about this, what I do understand is it's not like there's going to be some big massive event on Earth. Now, I have been saying for I think a year or two that 21 and 22 are nothing. They just are preparing us for 2023. And I would say I honestly don't know why I feel that way. Intuitively, I just have felt very strongly about that. When we understand that we're these vibrational, energetic beings, it's just an elevation of our consciousness and really connecting us to the spiritual conscious beings that we are. It'll be slow. Someone used the example of it'll be like the sunrise when you first see the sun peaking up, and then the sun just gets higher in the sky throughout the day. As the new beginning starts, it's going to start in small increments. But as you talked about, everything's breaking down. These things are going to happen concurrently. There's going to be this beautiful sense of joy, and there's going to be a lot of mucky, uncomfortable feelings, I think, is what I feel like is going to happen. So, Mark, this is very similar to what you talked about when you were talking about 1987 and the Harmonic Convergence. My understanding, and I know you're the astrology expert here, so I'll let you weigh in on this, is we are coming into a very unique planetary alignment. This alignment of the planets is creating a portal and an energy for Heaven's Cross. Very exciting times. Many of the people in our circles are coming together and do group meditation. You know, Armageddon, an apocalypse, and end of earth feels so ominous. In biblical terms, when you talk about the Armageddon, you have good people, bad people, which is based in duality, deserving, not deserving. Duality is very third dimensional, and as we're moving into this new world, up into this fifth dimensional octave in consciousness and energy, Christed consciousness, duality is not going to exist. There's not going to be one or the other, good or bad. It's all one. If you take that out of and just realize it's an end and it's a beginning, and take creating fear and the need to control through the power of fear,
Right.
it really is going to feel very beautiful. It's going to feel uncomfortable and mucky at times, but it's incredibly beautiful.
Good observation. I love the word concurrently. Yes, it's all happening together. It dovetails. You can't have one without the other. And I think the way you described it using biblical terms is a great metaphor for race opening up to divine energy that surrounds us. Since you brought up fear, let's segue into that for a moment. Yes, 23rd is pivotal, but we've already been experiencing the first waves of those energy. If you look what's happening globally the past 2 weeks, we're on our way to some pretty major events that are going to change the human's experience on Earth. As an awakened soul, somebody who is aware of what's happening, it's important for all of us as a whole to stay in that place of love and light and understanding and birthing this new period. Let's call the old energies on Earth the dark energies. There seems to be this struggle between dark and light that's been playing out since 1987. The dark energy, as I'm calling it, know that they are at their end. They are like a caged animal that's struggling and fighting for their survival. Things are going to get more and more chaotic and dark, and it's going to appear that we're moving backwards and the darkness is winning. We can't buy into that. We can't let those dark energies seed us in fear that, oh my God, we are losing the battle. The darkness is going to win. We have to stay firm in our knowing that the light is prevailing and the new age is birthing. On some level, it's a done deal. It's already happened. We just have to witness it playing out. It's important not to let fear into your experience as the last institutions in our society come crashing down.
I think that's really important. And I am going to ask you to get a little bit into, I talked about Pam Gregory, the astrologer, into her astrology. You said that. The other thing that I was thinking about is she is very clear that we need to stay spectators in this. The best thing we can do, we do have power and an ability to make a difference, is we have to keep sending love to everyone and just stay an observer of what's going on. Do not allow ourselves to get caught up in it and continue to send love out there. That's our power in the game.
Well, the planet itself, Gaia, is an energetic entity in itself, and it is complicit with the transformation that's happening.
Yeah, a lot of the work I do in my Mastering Alchemy class is really working on sending light and increasing the vibration of the Chrysid matrix throughout the planet, as well as for humanity.
I wanted to back up and talk about what's going on the 23rd. The equinox is the 20th, when the sun officially goes into Aries. As I mentioned earlier, that's the beginning of the astrological new year, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and 00 is the degrees at the beginning. Again, the way it's aspected, it is so much more powerful than just an astrological new year. It's the beginning of what is now being termed the new earth. The new earth is going to begin at that moment. Now, that's the 20th, but everybody keeps referencing the 23rd. Well, let me tell you what's happening on that. This is all about the planet Pluto, which is leaving Capricorn. The sign of Capricorn is all about the physical world, material stuff, our experience material world. There's 30 degrees in a sign, and it's at 29 degrees presently, and it's been retrograde for a while. It's just beginning to move forward. It's going to go into the sign of Aquarius on the 23rd. Now let's talk about the qualities of Pluto. The planet Pluto is the planet of death and rebirth. Usually when somebody experiences a Pluto transert in their personal chart, it lasts for about 2 years. Their life is totally different at the end of that 2 years than it was at the beginning of that 2 years, because everything deconstructs rather quickly and you have to learn the lessons involved and reconstruct something new. Well, that's happening globally beginning on the 23rd. Being the planet of deconstruction, that's going to affect all of our institutions, and they're going to be deconstructed. Now, Pluto's not going to stay there because if it's retrograde, it's going to move backward into Sagittarius, and we're going to get hit with this energy again before the end of the year when it officially goes into Aquarius. It'll stay for the next 40 years, I believe. There's going to be a lot of things crumbling down around us for a good period ahead of us. Well, actually, no, I don't think it's 40 years. I think it's till 2044 that Pluto will stay in Capricorn. So that's what's happening. And from personal experience, when Pluto transited my chart in my early 50s, that's exactly what happened. And by the end of it, my life was totally different than what it started in that decade.
Wow, that's amazing. I heard, even though I had that intuitive hit that 23 was going to be one heck of a year, now I'm hearing a lot that 23 is going to move very fast. A lot of things are going to happen, and it's going to proceed to the end of 24, and that perhaps things might settle out a little bit in 25.
Well, keep in mind, the energy's already tipped the scales. We are in the age of enlightenment, the age of light and Aquarius and love and compassion. We're already there, but we need to deal with all this dark energy before we can focus on, well, what you said, concurrently. So as things are deconstructed with this new energy that we're well into, we've been over that 50% mark since 2021. I have in my notes, I wanted to qualify that earlier when you were talking about that. Again, it's a done deal. We just have to stand firm in love and light while it plays out. And as it's deconstructing, we will slowly start reconstructing. I mean, how exciting that we chose to be alive during this experience and we can participate in what's being birthed for the future of mankind.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelmingly excited. Again, my energy has just been almost giddy over this event coming.
I have to say, everybody says don't watch the news, don't engage in what's going on. I do. I'm the interested observer. What's happening is just so unimaginable, even greater than what I ever could have thought was going to happen. And when I watch all these dark things happening, I don't emotionally get attached. It just confirms what's happening. The dark energies are crumbling down, and it's going to make room for love and light on the planet. And I think the news
is having its own issues of crumbling down at the moment.
The media is a huge institution in society.
It's interesting to listen to Pam Gregory because she connects what she sees as potential. So she doesn't predict what's going to happen. Like you just said, these are the energies that are out there. And usually with these energies, she'll come back and she will connect what she had said in her podcast to what's happening now to help people understand the influence and the importance of the astrology.
When that Pluto transit hit me in my early 50s, I had no idea what was going on astrologically till somebody else took the liberty to look at my natal chart and point it out to me. And when I was apprised of that, the experience was very difficult, but it made it palatable. It gave it purpose and meaning.
That's an important statement and observation. I feel like the last 3 years, there's been a series of astrological events that are highly unusual.
Just for the fun of it and for the edification of your audience, let's just throw out some of the time frames that we both have heard. Let's start with this year. The next one is the end of 2024, when most of the deconstruction should have already occurred. The next date I heard was 2033 as significant. Have you heard of a date before then?
I heard 2032, so it's got to be the same events.
Okay. And then I've heard 2038 when the transition was going to be complete. But now that I'm educated with the astrology, it looks more like 2044. Those are the dates to watch out for. And as you pointed out earlier with Pam Gregory, she's not predicting. These are just when the energies are present, what the energies are, and when the energies are going to end.
Yeah, astrologically, she has pointed out some interesting astrological patterns, I guess you call them, for the United States. This was a significant year for the United States. Now, she's not from the United States. She looks at astrology a bit differently than what I'm used to, and she drills it down on so many different levels.
Well, Sandra, I never heard of Pam Gregory before 6 months ago. You were the one who gifted me with her, and now I'm a devout follower. She's now my new astrological guru. And what she does is she looks at things historically. Everything is cyclical, including astrology. These aspects happen over and over again. When an aspect is coming up, like what's happening now, she'll look back in time and look and see when's the last time something like that happened. And what comes to mind is with the new Aquarian Age and where we're moving to, it's the last time this happened is when the French monarchy was brought down and all the royals were murdered, or the power was restored back to
the French Revolution.
Right. It's the same energies that are happening now. She can conclude from that, since it happened once before, that that's probably how it's going to play out this time. All the power structures are going to be brought down. Power is going to slowly move back until the people. And again, she points out that, things like that don't happen overnight, but they did happen over a period of time. And that's what we can anticipate with the energies that we're being gifted with now, as an example.
Right, that top-down structure is supposed to crumble. Well, what's interesting about that is, you're right, she really does get into that historically. And you had brought this up in one of our conversations, is that we're seeing a lot more uprising from populations in different countries where you usually don't see those types of protests because the oppression is so intense. But we're seeing it all over the world. You're seeing it in France, you're seeing it in the UK, you're seeing it in Iran, you're seeing it in the South American countries. It's very interesting that you're seeing this all over the globe right now.
So a major protest in Georgia. There's a movement to go back under the power of Russia. And it's the young people in most of these places that are demonstrating and saying, no, we are not moving backwards. This is what we were birthed into. You're not taking it away from us. And we are going to stand up and assert our power. It's wonderful to watch.
Wow, that's interesting. And it is. And actually, as you said that, I thought even in Israel, they're having huge protests that are saying no more. Exciting times.
Well, Sandra, for somebody who doesn't watch the news, you're awfully well informed.
I do preach a lot about the importance of not watching the news and how it's not really good for you. And you and I do have some discussions about that. I would have to say, yes, I do watch the news because I am pretty well informed. So I will say busted. But I do think it's important, as you said, not to get emotionally involved and let yourself be consumed. With everything that's going on, I do think you need to have some awareness.
Everybody seems to be awakening. I've had conversations with people you wouldn't think in a million years would be open to these energies that are playing out. And there seems to be a curiosity everywhere for it. Suddenly people are looking for something new and different because it's obvious that everything that we've had in the past is no longer working for us. All you have to do is initiate a conversation with somebody, and you'll be amazed at where the conversation goes from their recent past experiences.
Yeah, I would definitely say that there's a change, a shift, but the consciousness is different and people are changing. I interviewed a lady yesterday. She's a lovely lady. She is in her 70s, and she said, I've been living this double life all my life, and I've just decided to come out of the spiritual closet. And I was thinking as I was getting ready to do this podcast, because I said, I thought I was out of the spiritual closet, but as I've been doing these shows, what I realize is there have been bits and pieces of me still in that closet. And I thought, well, after this show, I will totally be out of the spiritual closet for sure.
I've used that description before, back in the 80s and 90s in the first part of this century. I didn't share my understandings and new beliefs with just anybody. I pick and chose. And I would say about 5 years ago is when I just came out of the spiritual closet. I live my life with my beliefs. I am quick to espouse those beliefs and hopefully plant seeds, and somebody else's seeds need to be planted.
I think that's our purpose.
I really didn't have any idea the significance of the harmonic convergence. Now that I think back on it, I was just excited to participate in this big group meditation that was allegedly happening all over the globe, and that it was going to open up a window of energy. But I had no idea that energy was going to bring us to this point. It was a vague memory up until recently when you started bringing it up. And then and Chiron brought it up a couple of times recently too. And I thought, oh, isn't that interesting that I had just had my awakening and was just becoming immersed in this. And I use the word immersed on purpose. And I was at that moment. Things just happen magically. When something happens for me, it just happens like that. I saw Julia Proust on Merv Griffin do a yoga pose, and that night I was in a yoga class. I met a guy doing massage therapist in Provincetown. I came home. The first thing I did was looked in the phone book. I was in massage school that following Saturday. It seems like when something is destined for me to happen, it's like a lightning bolt and it just happens like that. I think it's interesting that I was awoken prior to this. I'm not quite sure when. I always say 1987, but I always think it's in the fall. So maybe it was 1986 and 87 was my awakening year where everything changed in 1987. But it happened in such a timely manner so that I would be a participant in all this. In retrospect, it just blows me away. Talk about having purpose in life and not being aware of it. Thank you for the opportunity. It's all I can say.
Wow, Mark. And now you get to participate in Heaven's Cross. As you and I frequently discuss, the Golden Age is here, and we actually get to be a part of it. Not only did you do the Harmonic Convergence, now you're going to participate on the other side of it in Heaven's Cross.
Yeah, I really feel like this experience is nicely bookended for me. There in the beginning and there at the end.
This is like the lifetime of 10,000 lifetimes. You can't match this lifetime and this moment. It trumps like 10,000 lifetimes. We are so gifted to be here and be going through this. And if you would have asked either of this like 10 or 20 years ago, we'd be like, yeah, my life sucks. But now that we're at where we're at now, it's like this is the lifetime of 10,000 lifetimes, and how amazing it is that we get to be here for this. Mark, I would like to walk through the timeline one more time as we're finishing up.
Well, the harmonic convergence in 87 was the beginning of the wave of energy that was going to awaken masses of souls and usher in new spiritual enlightenment that we are witnessing now taking over the earth. I understood that that process was going to take 38 years. So that would take that to 2025. And as we've been witnessing with astrology, that seems to be right on target with transformation.
When you were talking, you did talk about Pam Gregory and her astrology and this 2-year Pluto transit that we're going through that is playing a significant role that should end in December 24. That would take us into 2025. The other thing that I thought was interesting was 25 years into the harmonic convergence was 2012, which was a very significant year.
From the astrological perspective, 12/12/12, December 12th, 2012, was the official beginning of the Aquarian Age. And it's the ushering in the Aquarian Age that is going to bring that golden period on Earth that's supposed to last 20,000 years. So we are still riding on the cusp of that.
Okay, so the harmonic convergence was an astrological event. 2012, 25 years later, was a very significant astrological event. And March 23rd, 2023 is a very significant astrological event, which I'll let you talk about one more time.
Yes, it is. What's happening this week is the astrological gift of Pluto moving into Aquarius, which is going to expose a lot of hidden truths in our government and in our social media and even in our everyday lives. And that's going to play out with Pluto going retrograde, going back into Capricorn. then back into Aquarius a couple times. So the two more dates that's going to happen, you can expect some pretty significant things to play out in the world around us. Pluto will officially be into Aquarius at the end of 2024, and it'll be in there for a 20-year period. All of this is going to end in 2044. The deconstruction of all of our social institutions should be complete by then. We should be well into creating and building the new paradigm that's going to support the golden age on Earth for the next 20,000 years.
And we have the other events in 2011. The crystalline Christed energy was returned to the planet, which some feel is the second coming fulfilled. And then in 2021, many have mentioned that the coronavirus is also a spiritual event. It is not seen as that now, but many feel like coronavirus will be seen as a spiritual event in the future. And it certainly did shut down the world and provide an opportunity for more introspective look personally and what was happening in societies throughout every country. And as we had talked about earlier, I had a hard time hearing that. Then someone mentioned that of the people who left the Earth plane through the coronavirus did so that they could support us energetically from the other side, which honestly did give my heart some solace when I think of it in those terms.
Well, we are all infinite beings. Just because we're not in the body doesn't mean that we can't participate in what's happening on the Earth plane.
I know in my personal life, and a lot of people have said that there's a lot of people who seem to be leaving the Earth plane, especially leaving the Earth plane earlier, and that we need to remember that we are getting a lot of help from the other side. This isn't just all about us human folks on the Earth. This really is taking a village on a much bigger level than we usually think of when we say that.
This is galactic for sure.
And I am really looking forward to that.
Me too.
I feel like the harmonic convergence was all awakening and deconstruction.
The harmonic convergence was a window opening up to the Earth plane that was going to usher in a higher vibrational energy to awaken many souls to their spiritual enlightenment. It had nothing to do with the transition, but it was setting the stage for the transition, because as souls awakened, they began to notice that most of their social institutions were corrupt and not working or serving for mankind in general. They were only serving a select few. The transition that happened in 12-12-12 from the Piscean Age to the Aquarian Age was significant because at this point, the old energy could not stay in power anymore. All these newly awakened souls and all the transformation that was beginning to happen, like I said earlier, with the Berlin Wall coming down and then the European Union forming, was all setting the stage for the new energy. Everything has to be deconstructed, closed out, eliminated before the new energy could usher in, initiate, create, rebuild something that is going to serve the masses on Earth in a more equitable, empathetic, and humane way. And astrology seems to be supporting all of this with the energies that we've been in since 2012, with the deconstruction of the world as we know it. Now with this Pluto moving into Aquarius on the 23rd today, that's amplifying it to the nth degree. It's going to accelerate it much quicker. It's interesting how everything fits together. All these pieces and parts of a puzzle are coming together to create an image that we can't even imagine at this point.
Is there any words of wisdom that you would like to leave for the listeners?
Oh, I love that quote from that Bette Davis movie, All About Eve. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but just know there's going to be a safe landing.
Thank you so much for participating in this podcast. This was definitely a unique one for Happy Hour. I'm excited for where we're at currently, and I'm excited for our future. I want to thank you so much for being a friend of the show.
Sandra, it's been a wonderful opportunity that you give me to share everything that I've gleaned over the years and all the information about what's happening now. I think it's important that the people who are awakened are assured that everything's going to be okay. This is all playing out perfectly, and we have an opportunity to create a new world order.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And for all our listeners out there, I do want to thank you for taking time out of your day to listen. And I really want to encourage everyone to embrace the light, stay positive, be observers, send love.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it with all your listeners out there. This is an important time that we're experiencing.
Anyone would like to communicate with Mark, he's a medical intuitive, you can contact him at spiritquester@gmail.com.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Until next time, embrace that wild soul. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us for this episode of Wild Souls Gatherings Happy Hour for the Spiritually Curious. To find out more about our guests, how to contact them, or detail on this episode, please see our show notes. You can also visit us at our website, wildsoulsgathering.com. We would love to hear from our visitors what you thought of this show, what you would like to see and hear in the future, questions you may have. Go to podinbox.com/happy hour for the spiritually curious. You can leave either a voice or traditional message for us. This is your host, Dr. Sandra Marie, sending each of you peace and love. Until we meet again, embrace your wild soul.